good evening, everybody. We're here tonight with Carson Hoyle and Chris Rini talking about their entrance into Pro632 class. We'll let each one of them give you their background and then go with the conversation. Carson?
All right, my name is Carson Hoyle. I just started in this class this year. Just got finished with my rookie year in PDRA Pro632. I started out with about 7 years in junior dragster. Just started out light with PDRA and all that, and ended up winning a couple races my last year, and we ended up deciding to race in 632. It was always a class that I wanted to race in. So we got into that class and learned to drive there, and we ended up winning our last race of the year this year. So
Carson, how was that transition coming out of the junior and into the door car? Was it what you expected, or how did that work out for you?
I mean, honestly, it was. I was really, I kind of overreacted in my mind about it. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was. And, we started testing at the end of 2024 and, just started going really slow at it, burnouts first, 60 foot, 100 foot. Just kept going back out. So it was a really, it was really good that we had enough time to go out to the track multiple times before I just went out into a race, and, missing the first race, I got some more testing and before the second race, and I was eventually ready.
Good deal. Yeah, you guys came out, and we knew you guys were going to be one to watch, and you got up to speed really fast. Had a lot of guys on notice early on to the deal. So, yeah, heck of a breakout rookie year. I'm surprised Chris got out of the car after that first race. I think he was having some fun.
He was having too much fun. Chris, a little bit about your background?
I've been racing since probably 2007 in the heads-up format. Started in Top Sportsman. Raced NMCA, Big Dog, Mad Dog, a lot of the local stuff. Migrated over to PDRA into Pro Nitrous. Been running there a couple of, probably since the beginning of the whole scenario. It's really good over there. It's fast. Tracks are good. They manage it pretty well. And we go to places that we could race these cars that go 360s over 200. Got Carson into juniors kind of against my wife's better judgment, but that was kind of the start of it all, and he did really well. He adapted real quick to the junior. That's a tough deal right there, and nobody realizes how tough those little cars are until they actually try to run one. It was very difficult to kind of get into that scenario, coming from just being a door car guy and never really playing with a little motor. And there's a lot more to that than people think. So I give a lot of those junior teams out there a lot of credit. You're fighting for half-pound increments on ET and everything else. And then we were going to bring Carson out of junior into Top Sportsman, but he didn't want to race a bracket program. And I understand that. I mean, a lot of guys over there in Top Sportsman have been doing it a long time, and they could really race both ends of the racetrack. And he wanted to be more of a heads-up racer, and I was a little bit hesitant in the beginning because I knew that to be competitive over in 632, one, you got to have good equipment. Two, you got to put the effort in. Three, you got to constantly work at it. We put the 632 car together. It was a car that I won a bunch of Pro Nitrous races in, and we ran it in Big Dog also. We ran it also on Outlaw no time. That's where Carson got his first, test hits in that car. That was Bryant Mariner's old car, and I just had a 762. We put it out there on no nitrous, just having to do burnouts, and then I ran it on one system real soft for him to kind of learn how to drive the car, and he adapted pretty well to it. And we basically just went out to Darlington and tested, and we weren't really super ready for the first race. Came up quick. and I drove the car the first race, and it was fun. That's kind of grassroots of where racing used to be before we got to the point of ridiculous. Where you go out there and run a car and really work on the car and work on your tune-up and suspension and try to improve. And instead of having, 7 stages of nitrous and, trying to run the thing on the ragged edge every run. And it was actually a fun deal to drive in. I think that it's a very good class. And I think that class has a lot of good cars in it. And, I listened to last week's podcast, and, I don't think the class should be slowed down. I think that at the end of the day, heads-up racing is a cost. And if you don't want to put the time, the effort into it, don't go heads-up racing, And the reality is that, we all have pretty decent equipment. And I think there was probably 6 or 7 cars that could have won last year in the current rule package. And I think that, if anybody really wants to get into 632 race, and you got to understand, you got to get in and you got to work at it. It's not going to be easy. You got, high-end motors. You got good motors. You got good teams. Most of the upfront teams have a good package of tuners / parts / knowledge. And if you don't have all of that, it's not an easy class to win, number one. Number two, if you want to run up front, you need to work on it. You can't put the thing in the trailer at the end of the race and pull it out of the trailer at the next race. It's heads up racing. I talked, me and Chris Nelson talk a bunch, and, the reality is that the teams that are going to win, or the teams that are up front, are the ones that either have gelled and put enough time in where they have a good program, they have a good package, and they've exhausted every avenue of the car to find ET. So I think that anybody that wants to whine, complain, bitch, and moan, then you really shouldn't race heads up, period, in any format, whether it's 632, Pro Nitrous, Pro Boost, Pro Street. The teams that are winning, the ones that everybody wants to bitch about, are the ones that generally put the most effort forward and try to, we all have a quote unquote fictitious budget, but in the world of heads up, the budget has to be, how much, where do you want to end up in the qualifying sheet? And are you satisfied with being number 6? And if you're satisfied being number 6, then you could cap your budget and move in and have a fun time racing and enjoy the actual racing part of it. But I think that it's a class like Pro Stock. Our cars are very close to each other with the current rule package. And, we all could complain about somebody could run better in the spring or the summer, depending on their combination. But the reality is that, if you look at the whole season, there was a lot of opportunity for a lot of different combinations to win. And I think most of you guys would agree with that. That's kind of where we're at. And, Carson came into it this year as a rookie driver, and we put a lot of effort in that program, and he did real well driving, and he adapted to it quick. And, we went home after the first race that I drove the car and said, we need to work on this, because we were just, we were in contention, but we were behind. And every race, between races, we worked on that car. And that car got more laps this season of testing and working on and changing parts than my Pro Nitrous. So, it's not like, oh, well, they just showed up and, they have money or whatever the complaint's going to be about why somebody's at the back of the field. The reality is whether you have money or you don't have money, you have to work at it, and you have to physically get that car prepared between races that you're at your best. And we run it as hard as we could run it. We leave nothing left on the table every run. And that's, and anybody that's out there that's run heads up, that's the way you have to be.
Yeah, usually the effort is rewarded, that's for sure. I made a comment last week that Alan O'Brien's camp has won the championship with 3 different engine combinations. So, the effort usually always kind of shows through, and the guys that are, like you say, well funded and they have the time and dedication that they put into it, it's hard to adjust the rule package to combat that. That's going to have a couple number advantages, period. So, I think the rules as they are pretty good. Hopefully we don't get too far away from that this year, because I think it's something that attracts people into the class. That's one question I have for you and your wife. If this class was substantially faster, let's say they sped the class up and maybe it was a 390-40 class, is that something you would have tried to bring your son out of a junior and into a door car that's that fast?
I think so, because I think that going 415 or 405, at the end of the day, there's not going to be a lot difference in the driver as far as what he's going to feel or she's going to feel. And I think that I look at when Carson started making his first couple runs and I saw the board light up, in testing, and we're at 165 miles an hour, you're like, oh God, it's 165 miles an hour. But at the end of the day, whether it's 165 or 172, I don't think it's going to make a shit of difference when carbon fiber hits concrete, So at the end of the day, as long as the safety equipment's there and the cars are built right and you have the best safety equipment that you could put in the car, 6 mile an hour or a tenth is not going to change anything. And I think that whole tenth is going to be made in the first 100 feet anyway. So, it's not going to be made anywhere else. If whether you put more pill in the car or you lighten the car or a combination of both, that speed difference or ET difference is not going to be the difference between safe and unsafe. And I think, as we've seen in other classes where rookie drivers come in, I think stepping out of a junior into any kind of door car is going to be a big step. But I think that a tenth is not going to be the difference between a parent saying yes or no. I think the first time we saw him go, 1090 or 990 or in a junior, it was like, oh my God, 60 miles an hour. You used to seeing them not even driving. So I don't think that would, in my opinion, that wouldn't make a big difference as a parent or as somebody migrating a young person into that class. I think you're better off with a young person in that class than them going down there and pounding the brake so they don't break out. That's a safer condition. At the last 100 feet of the racetrack, anything you do as a novice driver is a dangerous situation. But if you're flat foot and just looking to see where you're going and getting ready to pull your chute, that's a safer condition.
So Carson, they say that you're quiet in nature, but I just think you don't get a word in. What do you think about it?
No, I think that's right. Yeah.
And that was the response you got.
Yeah. So Carson, what was it like the first time you let the button go?
What's that?
Chris didn't come up there for 10 minutes. I think he just didn't get a chance to talk.
Say that one more time.
What was it like the first time you let the button go?
The first time that I ever did, it was with no nitrous, and that was a normal car. But it's definitely eye-opening whenever you have, all the power behind you, and but it feels controlled at the same time. But yeah, it definitely takes a little bit to get used to, but it gets better every pass though, as far as feeling it and knowing, if it's going or not.
Is there anything you would say to a up-and-coming driver that wanted to get into the class?
If you just gotta know when to get out of it, honestly. The whole problem with being unsafe is, if it starts shaking or something, people try to stay in it and make the run, but if you feel something, you just gotta get out of it whenever you don't have experience to pedal it or something.
So being the youngest driver in the class, how intimidating is it?
This year it was really, we were just trying to learn. We didn't really have any, our goal really was to win a race, and that's what we did. So, I mean, I know I can do my job on the tree. And the car really came around in the back half of the season, so I'm pretty confident right now going into next year.
That's good.
Well, you should be.
Yeah, he's earned it. I mean, that kid, he came a long way in a short amount of time.
Now, Chris, you were talking about the car earlier having a good pedigree, and I think we all know where the engine came from, having a good pedigree. Do you feel like marrying those things together and knowing what the performance potential was, do you feel like it was easier or harder than you thought it was going to be to get it up to speed to show its full potential?
Honestly, I thought it was harder than I thought it was going to be. I think putting the pedigree, X record holding motor, and literally, I mean, I took that motor right out the last race out of Amber Franklin's car. I mean, Tommy sold it to me, and we took that thing home, and Pat freshened it, and I thought we were going to put it in the car, and it would probably almost pick up where it left off. But there's a lot of other pieces to it, that we struggled with suspension setup. Not struggled, but there's a lot of changes. That car, when Carson drove it the first time with a 762 in it, I mean, on one kit, he let go of the button and he was going 960s. And we put the 632 in it and we let go of the button, we were going 990s, and anybody that's ever driven a car knows that's apples and oranges difference for the driver and for the feeling in the car. And it didn't just fall together by no means. I mean, there wasn't one race we left at and we weren't on the way home, and he's sitting in the cab with me telling me that we got to find more of this and we got to run more speed and how are these cars so much quicker? And, we worked on it and we did a lot of arguing back and forth on the way home. But the reality there's no magic, that one thing that's going to be magic to anybody's program. So, honestly, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And we really had to extract every little nook and cranny out of every part of the car. That the 632 deal, it's like I said, it's more like Pro Stock, where from the wheelie bar to the fuel cell, everything has to be as good and condition as it could be, and all working in harmony, because you're looking for little numbers, and little numbers are harder to find. And I'm so spoiled, and I guess that's the best word I could put with it, where I could just go back to the trailer and put 3,000 more jet in my car, if it's hot or we don't have a lot of oxygen or there's a lot of water grains in the air. Well, once you don't have that option, it really falls back on, okay, let's figure it out. And figuring it out is harder than you would think, because these cars we're racing against, the teams we're racing against, are at a pretty good, they're at a high caliber. And for us, we came in as newbies. I haven't had a 632 in 15, 18 years, So like, if to me that was a little motor, I mean, I went back to like a small block. And then, now we got a 632 and we got a limited jet. So now I'm handcuffed to the jet. And so it was tough. And I had high expectations, which were a little bit disappointing on testing and when we first put the car together, and then taking that car apart, which it had a really good pedigree as a 762 car. And it would go out there and, go 255 to the 330. And, it ran numbers. And
so when you first put that engine in the car and came to the first race, what did you run with it?
I think Carson's better at memorizing all the numbers than me. He's got a young brain.
You think you went at 26 at the first race?
Something like that.
Oh, we went bottom 20s in qualifying, I know. I don't remember if we went a teen at the first race.
I think second round you went a 21 or a 22, Chris, in the car. So I bring that up to say that you took an engine that went 12 or 10 or whatever it went, and essentially put it in the same car and came back out. And there's basically, you've been back and I think been somewhere in the 11 or 12 range with it since, but
we ran legal. The tech department does not work for me. So
I say all that though. I say all that to make an example of what I think the effort is worth, because you dropped a motor in a car that's been 409 or whatever it had been, and put it in another quality car, and it at the first race you probably were expecting a low teen, and it went a low 20, but the effort, there was a 10th left in that combination. So my point is to not become complacent and you say, oh, this runs this, and just show up at every race and this is what I run, but you keep working on it and you milked another 10th out of the car, from the first race to the last race, but just effort, so that was my point, where some of these guys feel like they're not competitive. But I really feel like a lot of people have what it takes to run faster than what they are, and the effort is the differential.
And I don't disagree with that. I think effort has to be, there's no limits on effort. And, fortunately for us, we have ATI Performance Products behind us, and JC Beatty had sent us multiple gear ratios and multiple transmissions, and we were in and out with transmissions for the first 3 races trying to find a happy point. And, and yes, that is an expense, but, like I said earlier, if you go out there and you put XYZ for ratio in there and expect to run with everybody else, if you don't make changes, you don't know. And some of the changes we made, even I wasn't in total belief they would improve it, but because I've never looked that hard at so many little areas. So yeah, you're right. If you go out there and you put a combination together, no matter who you buy the engine from, you buy the record-setting engine, or you buy an engine that was middle of the road, and you don't do anything to it, your expectations can exceed wherever you start out, because that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah, and I think that I always have a little saying that I think that people need to have their expectations and their efforts in line, because just like you say, you bought a record-setting engine, or let's say I build somebody an engine, and all of a sudden it doesn't run like so-and-so's engine, and they're like, oh man, my motor doesn't make any power, it doesn't run like so-and-so's. Well, you're a classic example of, from your first outing to your last outing of the year, there's more than a 10th in performance that you guys found in it with the same engine, same car, just by working the combination. So that's something for these guys, I think, that really need to step back and, analyze their program a bit from a distance at times, to say, man, it's not just I don't have the right valve angle head, or I don't have the right this or the right that. But if you just go out there and put some effort into what you do have, there's a lot of performance hiding in there in this class, because it's really a niche deal. Like you said, it's more pro stock-ish than it is, say, pro nitrous. And from what I hear in your family, it's a lot more fun than pro nitrous too.
You've been dying to say that all night, buddy.
I've been dying to say that. There's a cheerleader that Carson said wasn't allowed to come on. I want her to promote the class.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it could be a lot more fun, and I believe it is a lot of fun, that class. And I believe that it would be a great class for somebody that wants to be in heads up, wants to play with nitrous, and also has a limited amount of funds, because it isn't as abusive on maintenance. It isn't as abusive on consumables. So it is a scenario where you could go out there and, run these cars and test these cars, and not, the nice part about testing these cars, I'll tell you, is that you don't need this super premier racetrack, because you're not pulling a power wheelie at 200 feet. So you could test these cars locally, and you could run these cars at a pretty controlled budget, because they don't consume parts every lap. So it is a scenario where, my best years in racing, my winning years in racing, where we won championships and we run multiple races and number one qualifiers, was the years that I spent testing. But when we were testing back in the 737 days, as you remember, Chris, those motors, you could keep them together 30 runs and then tear them apart and fluff them and freshen them in the frame. And it was a lot more controlled than, a 959 or bigger, where it's consuming, the motor's miserable from the moment you let go of the button on a lot of the consumables like bearings and rings and everything else. It's not happy. Where, like we've tested a lot between races this year, and I think that's given us a lot more headway on running up there with the number one cars.
Sure. And that being said, there's some chatter about, jet change and, some of the rules, maybe loosening up a little bit and things like that. To me, I kind of like the jet restriction because, for one, we've got to really work on the engine and, showcase what you can do with an engine and work on it from that aspect. But also, you can test without the worry of, I'm going to go beat up my stuff, and then I'm either going to have to freshen it, swap engines, or whatever you do before the next race, or show up with the motor down a little bit, with the more nitrous we run through them. So, I really feel like that 36 jet, you about can't hurt them. They slow down before they hurt themselves. And we usually keep the short block in the car all year. I usually pull the heads off, every 30 runs and do valve springs and head gaskets and stuff like that to keep them as sharp as possible. But usually we can run the short block most of the season, barring something catastrophic.
Well, and somebody had just asked on there, what is the cost compared to Top Sportsman? Top Sportsman become so exaggerated from the cars that run elite all the way back to the Magnafuel cars that are running, 430s and 440s. You got guys in Top Sportsman that basically run a pro nitrous program for the most part.
Sure.
So is it cheaper than Top Sportsman? It just depends where you're fitting in. If you're a Top Sportsman 380 car, I would say it's cheaper. Because a 380 car, you can either need a 959 or have one hell of a good running 5-inch motor. And if you're going to run that with a 5-inch motor, you're going to be putting some nitrous through it, as you know, Chris. And those cars, they're going to consume parts. So I would say if you got a car that's, running 4.0s or 410 in Top Sportsman, I would say your cost is going to be close to the same. The only difference is going to be is that, you're going to have a program where you're going to be controlled by jet. And that's going to also kind of stipulate the quality of the parts that you have underneath that jet, from the motor to the converter to the transmission to the chassis to the suspension. So if you have those parts already, I think the cost for 632 to Top Sportsman is pretty close.
Chris, I want to go back to a part of the conversation when you first stated qualifying like number 5 in a class. So, and I'm that guy. If I'm number 5, I'm good. Because now, I
was talking about you.
I know, but I'm not taking it personal either. But being number 5 compared to number 1 in 2024 wasn't that much of a number. And I'm also I am when it gets back to the shop, I'm the only one. Me and Matt. I don't see Matt till we get to the racetrack. So I basically do all the maintenance and everything else on the car, and then I'll meet Matt at the track to go testing, which now for us is 4.5 hours until hopefully something happens with West Palm Beach and it can turn into a 45-minute trip. So testing is a little bit tough for us right now at this point in time, and we don't have a tuner. So basically, when you stop by that time at the trailer, what you see is what you got. I don't think I need a tuner. I learned it myself. Obviously, I have the same stuff that you had when you had the Schweitzer motor. You know what I mean? The Motec. Brandon can help me out when he can, and that is what it is. But I do believe 100% what you say is it's like, and Troy put on there too. The races are won back at the shop. They're not won at the track. The guy that leaves his stuff in the trailer and shows up and pulls out and thinks he's going to be in the top 5 is delusional. There's so much shit that goes on with these cars.
There's another side to that, though, is, at the last race, I think about 4 or 5 cars ran 412 with a something. So right now, I almost feel like the biggest differential is in the reaction time, more so than the performance difference on the racetrack. So
and we got a young driver. So
got a young driver like Carson or something like
young
that.
Young driver's hard to trot off the button. So, they have no worries. The car's going to be full. They have
Trust
no
me,
big
we
problems.
I mean, don't think we're not scouting what's going on. You know what I mean? It's a real deal. So I agree with Troy. Is a large part of the race is won in the shop.
Yes.
But nowadays you got to have everything, like Chris referenced earlier on the index or the bracket race of a top sportsman deal. You got to run the front and the back. Well, that's how 632 has gotten to be too. You got to be cutthroat on the starting line and be able to have something out the back. So, Troy, yes, you're right, but man, these drivers are tightening up, and it's really fun racing right now.
Well, somebody just posted on there. JP Miller just asked if it would be considered a more affordable way to get into a heads-up racing is to go to 632, and it is. I mean, unless you know what I mean.
I believe so. You don't have to have a state-of-the-art car. I mean, I think you could get, a 10-year-old, top sportsman, pro stock or pro mod style of car. And, that's not super, super expensive. Make some subtle changes to it and come out and race. So I think it is kind of the entry level heads up category or pro category over at PDRA.
It's definitely a gear ratio race.
Sure.
In my opinion,
there's a lot to be found.
He mentioned going through, transmission gears. I mean, I've gone through the same thing. I carry 3 different ratios in a car, and I got 6 rear end ratios in a trailer. And at the end of the day, I use 2. All the rest of it's spare parts now. You know what I mean? I got stuff that I could sell that nobody's going to need because
we call those dyno time only.
Yeah, you have to buy it to try it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure Chris knows, planetary sets like $3,500 to find out that it doesn't work right, And I think it's a lot about transmissions and gear ratio, the class. Now you got a motor. Obviously, everybody here can state, probably except for Carson, unless he knows the numbers. You need a motor that makes about 1,350 horsepower on a stingy dyno. I think that's the number you need to make.
Well, I think everybody needs to just look at it, and this is a bit of an opinion, but until they run to the top of their, potential with their combination, there isn't really a bunch of rule arguing to do because it's not the rules that are holding you back at that point. If you got somebody else in the category that has the same combination of parts, let's say non-lockup 3-speed and a big block with a 36 jet, and you're a 10th behind, then it's not the rules' fault. And I know that may or may not be popular with everybody, but that's just the facts. If you get to the point where you've wrung its neck for all it's worth, and there's a big differential, then there's a rule conversation. But I don't think we have a rule conversation right now. The racing's really good.
No, I mean, a mile an hour is all close. The top 5 cars, top 6 cars, mile an hour is always pretty close. ETs are reflective to it, and I just think again, people have to go to work. Me and you, Chris, have stated it. Nelson, we've stated it since the start of the show. Mm-hmm. You got to put your time in. I mean,
you're going testing next week. I mean, that hopefully all for naught. I mean, it'd be nice to have a set of rules in print.
I know, right?
So we're not wasting our time or anything like that. But I've got engines back in the shop right now that are getting freshened up for next year. So PDRA, if you're listening, let's get us some rules so we don't waste any money here, because that's going to be critical.
January 6th.
I think you'll see rules.
January 6th.
Great.
Tuesday, you'll see rules.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm rubbing my magic wand. It's going to be Tuesday. I thought Chris Rini was going to have all the answers since, he was like the pit bull in PRI.
I tried. Unfortunately, everybody's on. It was a promise for rules early in January. I know that pisses a lot of people off because they got motors at engine shops and they're worried about, what they're going to do to them. And is what, if anything changes with jet, will that hurt? What they're doing to, be a negative instead of a positive? I get it. We're all in the same boat. I mean, hopefully Tyler and everybody, is putting the rules out the first week of January so we can kind of make a decision and then start testing. Obviously it's like 36 degrees here now, so we're not testing for another 2 months at least, and we'll have to go south to do it. But it would be nice to get something, I tried to get something today from anybody that give me an answer, but I couldn't get an answer on anything rule wise.
No,
And
got
I think at the end of the day, I think that whatever rule changes they do make, I'm hoping they're subtle. So it's not I don't think they're going to do anything extreme, in my opinion. So I think at the end of the day, I don't think the rules, whatever they do, are going to hurt anybody's program. I think they'll help it. But yeah, it's the season hasn't started, but I get the last season's been over for a while.
Yeah, it's you didn't have a whole lot of rule changes in Pro Nitrous, right, Chris?
No, but they haven't introduced any rules yet either. So that's all in the unknown. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a very competitive class like this one is. But I think that the only rule changes that could happen are possibly going to be subtle. So hopefully they do a couple of rule changes in that class. And if they do a rule change in this class to speed it up a little bit, and I think that would be good too. I think it'd be exciting. And we don't have any more pro stock cars there. So we need something to fill the void of 4.0 cars, I feel like. And I also feel like that it separates them a little bit more from a lot of the other classes. Unfortunately, to go 4.0s, and Nelson, you could probably attest to this. I could call Nelson up and order a 762 on 3 kits and go 4.0s all day. So, it's not a big number, but at least it puts us out of the 20s. That's kind of like bracket mode at this point, So, and it would be nice just to see them speed up. It would be a little more exciting,
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah,
I mean,
it seems like there's been some progression each year in performance just organically. I don't know. I just hope if any changes, they're subtle, because I mean, we adapted and run the engines to the rules that we have now and try to make a max effort with that, as that 36 jet stated. And, the guys, I hope we're not penalizing the guys that have supported the class to try to attract guys that haven't supported the class. And that's basically my bottom line. Like, I don't really care how fast they run. I don't want any of the guys that have been supporting to get affected adversely by it, to try to draw in somebody that may or may not come.
I think let's just say, for argument's sake, they give us a little bit more nitrous pill, I think that will help a lot of the guys that don't have an A motor, and maybe help it make a little bit more power.
Okay, what happens when the guys, like, say your team has an A motor and some more jet?
We're going to pick up 2.
So the rule did nothing.
The same.
It made the slow car faster, but it made the fast car faster. So
all right, my best analogy for this, Chris, is give an ugly girl a little bit of makeup, or give an ugly girl a lot of bit of makeup. Which is she going to look better?
Well, she may be a 10 at 2, but she's still going to be a 2 at 10.
I get it, but I mean, I think that nitrous makes performance that it's harder for people to make on hard metal parts.
Yeah, I'm still of the opinion the good teams are going to have both.
Yep.
I think the good teams will always be good, and that's something that's always going to be a complaint, And the reality is that, like we get said in the way beginning of all this, I think that the good teams are going to be the ones that put in the effort and put in the time and really work on what they have, whether it's the best stuff or it's in the middle of the road, because you could get middle of the road to the front. And, a long time ago, an employer of mine, I've worked for a couple guys in my life, told me the difference between a good employee and a great employee is the one that puts in the effort, that cares. And that's the same thing that happens with racing. The ones that put in the effort and care and devote themselves to it and live it, breathe it, eat it, and think about it, even when we're on the way home, whether we lost whatever round, those are the ones that are trying to pick themselves back. Those are the teams that are trying to pick themselves back up and be ready or better for the next event.
That sums it up.
Yep. What's Carson want to see for 2026?
I mean, I wouldn't mind to see the class speed up. I think that'd be a good opportunity for the class with there not being pro stock anymore. I don't know if we could get down to the 3s, but 4.0s is really, it would be exciting to see that out of the class. All the races that we were running 14s, it felt a lot better than the 420s, of course. And I think it'd be good, but I also think the rules right now are very fair for everybody. As far as if you have a Turbo 400, a Liberty, we all kind of run together. So I don't want to mess up that, and I also don't want to mess up our program that we already have. So I mean, yeah, well, I would think it'd be cool to speed us up, but I'd be fine either way.
Who's your favorite rivalry when you pull up the start line? Who are you looking for that you guys are always tight on the tree and tight on the finish line down there?
Well, I mean, I've probably raced Jeff about 4 times this year, and about 1 and 3 against him. So you get a couple back on that. I think me and Walter are pretty close a lot. Me and Nicole had a couple close races. We had there's a lot of people there that are really killer on the tree, and that's a huge part of winning. I mean, I've lost on a hole shot, a big hole shot. I've won on a big hole shot this year. So, even if you're 4 numbers behind, or if you're 4
race,
behind, you're still in. You still, can't relax on the tree for sure.
I think that sums it up. There's multiple people that you just named that are all capable of winning, and that's really when I think racing's at its best.
Well, you didn't ask me what I wanted to see for this year.
Okay, Mr. Rini, what would you like to see for?
I'm not sure we got that much battery life.
Well, plug that flip phone in. I mean, I know you.
No true words.
You got your Razor's flip phone, but what I'd like to see, honestly, for our team, I'd love to see a real number 1 qualifier where Jason doesn't have to make us the trophy, and I would love to see a couple of wins. I'd like to see some hard racing. I'd like to see a lot of people up there up on the wheel. That you roll up there in 632. I mean, you need to be up on the wheel, and like we said earlier. I mean, you're 4 behind at the start line, whether you got a fast car or not. I mean, may lose at the finish line. Sure. And I think that I think we're going to race hard this year, and I think our program's come a long way, and I'd love to see Carson get a championship. So,
I think it's very feasible. I also think there's a lot of guys sitting at home thinking the same thing. So I think that's what makes the class great.
You know what they need to do? Show up. Show up.
Man, you took the words out of my mouth. We watched that intro with all those cars, and only about 40% of them race the class on a regular basis.
And I guess you guys didn't have a picture of Carson's car. Maybe I should send you a winner circle picture.
Maybe you should. Send it to Race 632.
I was waiting for Jason or Carson to say he's looking for Jason. I thought we might be able to get a little something going here. Put a little life in the class.
He's already we had our banter on a top end in Virginia, right?
I saw you trying to get on his good side with the trophy. I see what you're doing.
We're in Virginia. I told him he put me. You beat me in Virginia, right?
I don't think I've raced you. And
oh, he's so nice. Yes, you did. Of course.
I think you did because I said I'm because I went around and you came behind me. You raced after me, so I'm coming to take my trophy back, and we bantered back and forth on the top end, and I think the next round I went out. I thought I had you and we went out. I know I was going to race your dad in the first race, but Walter ended up beating me, and then he had to race Walter for the next round at the first race. But yeah, but maybe we never did race.
I don't remember.
Well, we can fix that in qualifying, right?
We can put hamburgers on it or so. I'm a broke guy, so I mean by the time I get to the racetrack, I got no money. So
I thought about putting a 632 in my car, but then our family life would really go downhill.
Why would that happen?
because then we'd be arguing all the time instead of just a little bit of the time.
Listen, your wife
I
said
can tell
right
you,
here,
he's sleeping in the toter.
it's
Yeah.
the best. She said it's the best racing of all that she's ever had.
It is.
632.
Well, how about you just take a step back because you're getting a little old and gray and just put her in the car with the 632 in it. Let's put some spice in that life.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
wait a minute. When she
So I have two people on the way home telling me that their cars aren't fast enough.
So it'd be the same thing?
It'd be the same thing, just different.
No difference.
Only difference is Carson and I go to different bedrooms.
You and Emily might too if her car didn't run.
I'm telling you, if she was up on the tree and we got outran, it'd be a hard ride home.
It's probably the same though. If Carson's sharp on the bulb and doesn't get there on the other end, it's probably the same story.
He knows that we put in max effort.
Yeah, we did for sure.
So everybody's salty when their bulb doesn't light up on the wall, but at the end of the day, all you can do is your best. And I think that's where like, if people are sitting at home going, I can't race with those guys, or, the O'Brien team has been doing it for years. They're gelled into a winning team and we're never going to beat that. If you have that approach, you shouldn't be in drag racing.
They're exactly right then at that point, is they can't do it if they don't feel like they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to go there. I mean, you know what? I traveled around the country for 10 years with me and just one guy, and we won a lot of races. And we showed up as the underdog team where they were racing against paid teams and 4 crew people. And it was, you were there, Chris. It was me and one guy,
It was a blast.
It was a blast, but it was more like 632 racing back then.
Sure.
Where Absolutely. It was everybody looking for max effort out of what they brought to the table.
I can tell you, like in your program, when you went from the 737 Hemi engine and went to the 5.3 wedge, I can tell you the fun exponentially went down. There was no more going out to eat after qualifying. It was, I'm going to go over to Rini's and help them pull the heads off. And that's what I'm trying to make sure we stay away from in the 632 deal.
And I think that if guys are thinking about the 632 deal, the maintenance is exponentially nothing compared to a full-blown nitrous program. Sure. You go back and you study the run and you study the spark plugs and you study what you could do, and it's not about who's willing to catastrophically nuke the thing to win,
Well, that you don't look at like, what can I do next, but like, what didn't I do well enough on that run? So you just start looking at other aspects of the car, because you can't just dig into the manifold with your 7/16 wrench and fix your problems, So now you got to look at the rest of the car and figure out where you missed it.
Well, and the next problem with that 7/16 wrench to fix the problem or to get your performance up is the intelligent part of your brain gets smaller and the ego part of your brain gets bigger, and then your wallet gets smaller.
Right.
So with 632, at least you go back there, whether it's you and a team or you and one person, you could go back there and collectively say, okay, we need to look at here and we need to work on this and we need to look at that. And we just need to do a better job in 5 small areas, which are going to add up to that number or 2 that we're looking for.
Sure.
I think having the limit on the jet really starts to put focus on the collective decisions you make between the rounds.
Absolutely.
So, but we'll take anybody on in qualifying. So, Jason, you want a piece? I got you.
All right, buddy. I'll see you in block.
Bring some of that go fast money to the start line.
Go fast money.
Yeah, that's what we call those speedboats. That's what we call those speedboats in Florida.
Yeah, ain't that many of them down here anymore.
Yabba Dabba Doo said lock it in.
Well, you lock it in, right?
I'll lock it in with Yabba Dabba Doo.
Let me get rid of my 2025 ghost off my back, and I'll see you in the lanes in Galot.
Sounds good.
We need a rivalry. Spice up the class a little bit. Sounds good to me.
Well, I would put Emily against anybody. So you hang out her baby boy or something, Make sure you're ready down at the finish line. Make sure you're out of your car and you got your composure.
Yeah, keep your helmet on, and your visor down.
Right.
Well, good
Right,
deal.
everybody
Thanks,
got
guys,
anything
for
else?
being on tonight. We appreciate it, and thank you
Yeah.
for the support of the
Great
class.
conversation.
You're welcome. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
You guys, Happy New Year's, everybody.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.